What is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game? It's many things. It's a persistent world that is constantly changing and in motion, whether you're there or not. It's a social network for people from around the world to share a common gaming experience. It is, at its heart, a video game, usually a computer video game, although there are a few that work on standard gaming consoles. The massively multiplayer part refers to the fact that there are large numbers of people playing it. Here on the screen I've just entered an ice belt in the depths of the Halima star system. Here is the overview. Each of these square icons, Sigma Cypher, Chronic 71, Draken, Galactic Scar, Denisha, Lena Nightsaber. Each one of those represents an actual person playing this game from somewhere, and it's the interaction of all of these players that create the experience, which is a MMO. Fundamentally different than a standard RPG, where you play the game alone, or in a few circumstances with a small group of friends in a game such as Neverwinter Nights. When you add a multiplayer aspect to a game, you add more than just additional people to play the game with. There are cooperative aspects as well as competitive aspects. One of the main competitive aspects of an MMO with a crafting system is economic. EVE, the game that I'm currently displaying, has a heavy economic aspect in its construction of starships and rigging modules for modifying your ship, ammunition. The marketplace consists of player versus player that's almost as intense and lethal as that of, when you're firing actual lasers at each other. Pricing your components, undercutting the competitor, arranging trade agreements and lucrative contracts, all these different bits of economy that you really don't get in a single player game, where you're selling to some non-player merchant for a set price determined by the developers. With this game, every purchase order that's on here for these modules are from another player. If I can produce the same goods for less overhead, I can undercut their price, making mine the preferred product, and still turn a profit. One of the core differences between a MMO and any other video game is the state of persistence. In a game such as Civilizations that I have up now, nothing happens until I take my turn. Then the computer will take its. Even more action-based games that are first-person shooters, sports games where the action is ongoing, when you save or pause the game or turn it off, that ends the existence of that game world. It doesn't persist. It doesn't stay. Whereas in an MMO, even right now, as I'm recording this, there are things going on in EVE Online. There are things going on in all of the persistent worlds of the MMOs. Additionally, a major difference is that there is no save button. A common trick on Civ was to save before a battle, and then with the random number generator didn't go your way, you could always reload and try again. Can't do that in a persistent world. Another aspect in which conventional games and MMOs differ, if not a key aspect, is scale of multiplayer. Even a game such as Civ only allows me to have a certain number of people playing at one time. 12 players on a huge map. So at most I can have 11 friends playing the game with me. Whereas
On a typical night, I see 100+ people on an MMO, if not several hundred. And these are people from all over the world. Random people who I automatically share an interest in and don't have to know in advance in order to create the game. Whereas with Civ, in order to get a game going, we've got to know each other, we've got to be able to trade IP information. Now granted, a lot of the games, Dawn of War, I think even Civ, have game finding features. It's a growing feature. A lot of sport games, a lot of first-person shooters use game lobbies and ratings to match you to someone who'd be a competitive match for you. But it's still that scale. A dozen players just doesn't quite meet the requirement for being massively multiplayer.
Now back to MMOs, this time the fantasy world of DDO, Dungeons & Dragons Online, where I take the place of my character Mannheim Steamroller, a Warforged fighter, undertaking a typical adventure through the sewers. Such heroic work. The concept of questing, undertaking tasks in order to get a reward, has become highly centralized to the MMO. In this case, it's defeating the inhabitants of this sewer, at the end of which, in addition to the loot, you receive some sort of reward item. Commensurate, hopefully, with the level of risk and mostly with the amount of time that you have to put into accomplishing the task. The ultimate goal, of course, is the chest full of loot. Defeat the bad guys, rescue the princess, all that fun stuff. But in the end, it all comes down to the swag. Of course, your most classic challenge is the horde of enemies. Traps are also another common feature. That swag that you gather lets you keep getting progressively more powerful equipment so that you can kill more progressively powerful creatures and gather, as you can guess, progressively larger piles of swag. As you can see at the moment, I'm traveling alone. Playing solo has unfortunately, in my opinion, become a very common aspect of MMO playing. It's massively multiplayer, but it doesn't matter how much. It doesn't matter how often you give players the tools to work together; they still have to choose to do so. And unfortunately, a lot of players choose not to. In my case, it's not so much a choice as it is the fact that I play during the times when most US players are asleep. Night owl that I am. I have had a lot of luck playing with players from other countries. But I'll get more into the social aspects of gaming in a later section of this project. For now, I just wanted to point out the questing structure.